Hi, Sakar. Thank you so much for giving us your time. For the viewers, may we request you to please share your journey and your story in your own words?
My story actually started really early. Like, actually, I decided that I'll be doing MBA from somewhere abroad almost like 5 years ago now. I was still at my old job. I was working with a KPO called Trust Vista Financial Services, which provides financial services to investment banks, asset management firms, etc. Which are located outside India. So it was like the first job which I had. I joined straight out of college, and I was already thinking about what I'm going to do next. I already had some idea of what I was going to do next, but it was already always in my mind that I was going to do something outside India. So the best way to go about it was to get an MBA from outside, and that was already in my mind from that point on. So just talking to people, I figured that I need at least some experience, which is not really needed in India, because a lot of people, what they do is a lot of people actually just go for an MBA right after their graduation. So after talking to a few people, I realized that I need a couple of years of experience, and then I can just go abroad and then do whatever. And a lot of people mentioned GMAT as well. So I figured that let me just quit my job. After 2 years, I quit my job, and then I figured that I'll just study for GMAT and then apply and then just go. I figured that it was so easy and everything would fall into place, and then everything would be all good, and then it would work out. So I quit my job without having another job in hand, and I figured that I'll take my time to study for GMAT, because I did not know how tough GMAT was going to be in the first place. I did not want to give CAT because that was obviously not what I wanted to do. It's also very competitive in itself. So and maths was not my forte. So I figured that I will just study a bit for GMAT, and then go for it. I had a few countries in mind, Australia and US being one, a couple of them, and I had also considered Singapore at that point, and Europe as well. But like any other person, a lot of stuff gets cleared during the whole process. So I did not know a lot of things at that time, which I know now. And that point, I think I was also a bit naive, to be honest, because I just realized that everything would go perfectly. So I started preparing for GMAT, and in the process, I realized that it was, first of all, it was not that easy. I just joined a local tuition for it, and I thought it would be enough, but that it was not enough. And I thought my own preparation would also help me as well. If I am putting so much time into it, I just quit my job. I had all the time in my hand, and I was also volunteering for an NGO at that time. So even after that, I had still a lot of time to study. And you know how people get lazy in itself, like once they once they stop working. So I was definitely lazy at that point. I just figured that GMAT would be a breeze, but later I realized it was not. I gave my first attempt in 2018, and I got a 670 in GMAT, and I knew right away that it was not enough for admission into any top MBA program. So, and at that point, I also realized that all the colleges that I was considering, they needed at least, you can say maybe 4 to 5 years of experience on average. And at that point, I'd only had 2 years of experience. So I realized that I needed to get a job first of all, and then maybe afterwards I can just try for GMAT again,
Right.
and then go along with that. So which is exactly what I did. I was very fortunate that despite my you can say like a 5 month gap, I managed to get a really good job. I managed to actually get a better job into an investment bank in Mumbai itself, and it was a really good breakthrough for me, because for my profile itself, it was a progression. First of all, going from a back-end KPO job to a boutique investment banking, which is a front-end job, working with clients directly, working on live transactions as well. So the work was really good. I was enjoying my work as well, and alongside, I was also studying for GMAT.
Right.
But so obviously, like I gave my second attempt in 2020 itself, like right before the lockdown, in fact, and I completely screwed up. I mean, it was not a very good attempt at all, and partly because of I'm not very good at giving that pressure gets me, honestly speaking, of giving
Mm-hmm.
a live competitive exam, so the pressure got to me, and obviously I was very unprepared at that time. I just thought that a little bit of more practice would help, but it didn't help again. So yeah, I completely screwed it up, and then I realized that I needed to give it again, obviously. And this time I realized that I need to get a proper coaching for this. I need to really work on my time management during the GMAT exam as well, because along with the whole point of the anxiety which gets in during the exam really affects your time management. So,
Absolutely.
and that's where I was struggling the most. In fact, I knew most of the answers, but the major challenge for me was time management. So I started working on that, and that's where I kind of took help from some online coaching institutions, and I really worked on especially the maths part of the quantitative part of the GMAT,
Right.
which was not, like I mentioned, it was not the best. And yeah, I finally gave my another GMAT attempt in very recently in August 2021,
Yes.
and I got a 720.
That's amazing.
Thanks, but I even then I realized that maybe 720 in itself is also not enough. But at that point, I had realized that I cannot do better than this. And even though I do better than this, it would be a long shot. First of all, and secondly, I did not have enough time because the round one applications were just around the corner.
Right.
So I realized that I can just take the 720 and then just go with it and try my best, because GMAT is, like I said, GMAT is just one part of the application, and there's a lot of other parts like your profile itself, which is extremely important and sometimes even more important than GMAT.
Right.
So yeah, so I figured that I can still do the best with what I've got.
Mm-hmm.
So I applied to a few US schools, few couple of Australian schools. I had also planned on applying to Canadian schools, but I did not end up doing that. But yeah, that's kind of been my journey so far. And actually, I do have an update. I actually got into two colleges in Australia and one college in the US. Obviously, I didn't mention this before, but
Right.
a whole part of the very important factor is also your own financial situation. So you really have to consider that also in the process. But yeah, if everything else checks out, then definitely apply to whatever colleges you're planning to.
Congratulations. You got into
Thank you.
three colleges, which is amazing and it's quite inspiring how far you've
Yeah.
come. That's awesome.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Right. So, in your opinion, what was that main action or decision you took that made all the difference?
The main difference that was there was because of, I would say, perseverance. First of all, a lot of people just kind of, obviously a lot of people try, like I said, I was so naive that I was trying to do everything in one go.
Mm-hmm.
I was trying to, you can do it in one go if you practice a lot. If you can just, I was just talking about GMAT in itself, for example. A lot
Mm-hmm.
of people, what they try to do is they do it half-heartedly and then go about it, which is exactly what I did. But they kind of gave up after that. So what I tried to do was, first I realized okay, this is the area where I really need improvement. This is exactly what is going wrong, and that was because of the all the mocks that I gave in the exact situation or in the exact environment that an actual GMAT test is. Also, what kind of really made the difference was the online GMAT, because in all honesty, the actual center-based GMAT was something that was really not working for me, because there's a lot of issues with that in itself, because there's a lot of what do you call distractions, I guess you can say. So again, like, it depends from person to person, but for me it was causing a lot of issues. So when the GMAT, because of the pandemic, the GMAT started the online version. It really helped me because I could give the test in the comfort of my own home, and there was no distractions at all. So that also kind of made a huge difference in my GMAT score as well. In the
Okay.
whole application process also, there are a lot of things which I realized quite late, quite when I was into the process in itself. I started realizing a lot of things. I started realizing what my level was, because every person or every profile, I would say, has you can say, a standing, and there's so much competition out there that you really have to understand where you stand. And I guess that a lot of people, because just speaking to other candidates as well, speaking to people who are planning to give GMAT as well, planning to apply for universities as well,
Yeah.
they are under the impression that the sub ho jayega and then everything will just work out. And they started asking me, why are you not applying to why are you not applying to like colleges like Stanford and all these colleges?
Right.
And this is and so I realized that these people are still like, a lot of things you realize when you're in the process.
Absolutely.
What really made the difference again was like really understanding where I stood in terms of my whole profile
Okay.
vis-a-vis other candidates as well.
Right.
So yeah, that definitely made a difference as well.
Okay. So, with the benefit of hindsight, what do you think were a few mistakes you committed in the process?
Yeah, I think one of the biggest mistakes, like I've mentioned again and again, was just going with what I knew in the first place. Like right in the beginning, when I was giving GMAT, the first attempt I gave was essentially from a perspective of that whatever score I'll get, I'll just go with it and I'll just land up where wherever is the best. And that was a mistake in itself, because first of all, I was just assuming that I will get a good score
Mm-hmm.
with just the bare minimum preparation. I was just assuming that I'll get that score. Secondly, the biggest mistake I made, was not really analyzing my own profile from the perspective of where I stood, like I mentioned,
Yes.
vis-a-vis the other candidates, vis-a-vis the other Indian candidates as well. Because within the Indian community as well, there's a huge competition.
Mm-hmm.
Just in the even if you take GMAT in consideration, there are in Indians usually the GMAT scores are really high. So the mistake initially what I made was
Mm-hmm.
looking at my profile in isolation. Like I looked at my own profile and then it started to look like, oh, it's actually I do have a very good profile. And I was like, okay, I can just apply to Duke, I can apply to Darden, I can apply to whatever, Yale or whatever, and I have a good shot at it. But that was a mistake, because in isolation, a lot of profiles look good, but when you actually put it in context of how competitive it gets out there, what is the, for in this particular cycle, how competitive it gets.
Right.
So yeah, it definitely, it's very important to put it in context and
Right.
look at not in isolation, but
Mhm.
as a whole.
All right. Okay. So, going back to your GMAT prep phase, what were the main resources that you used, and what tips will you give to the future GMAT aspirants?
The resources that I used were online coaching institutions. Like obviously, Experts Global was one of them. In fact, the mocks that Experts Global has, there was something that I found were really close to the actual GMAT
Mm-hmm.
examination, in terms of like the look and feel and the everything, and the analysis that it gives afterwards was very useful for me. One of the most important things was the analysis for me. I really took the GMATs. Obviously you get 15, at that time I got 15, so I actually had an opportunity to put a timetable in place, and
Okay.
I gave mocks every alternate day, in fact. And until I was really sure, like I was not making those same time management mistakes again, I was
Right.
not hung up on any questions, for instance. I was just moving forward with guessing and moving on, in case I don't know any answer. So stuff like that really, I was able to do only with those mocks as well. So those Experts Global really helped me with that, which
Right.
actually worked. I would say 720, I was not expecting. So definitely it worked. So yeah, those were the resources which I used. Apart from that, a lot of it was practicing by myself, analyzing mistakes by myself. A lot of time was had gone in analyzing the mistakes in itself.
Mm-hmm.
I would look at you can say, all the wrong answers, all the right answers, everything in detail. Experts Global, for instance, had a very good, you can say, mechanism where they actually showed the answers, and there was a video for the explanation of the each answer, if I was not sure of actually how they got there. So it was very useful. Your second part of the question was what tips I would give, right?
Right.
For GMAT, I would say the best tip is, like I said, analysis of your mock tests. So obviously, if you give mock tests, you can't just give a mock test, look at the score, feel good, and then move on, or feel bad and then move on.
Right.
If you're feeling good, then also you have to really analyze what you did. Maybe it was a fluke, right? Maybe a lot of questions you got were
Mm-hmm.
maybe you got the right answer, but through a wrong way of doing it, so
Right.
which will not work again. And
Okay.
if you're getting a bad score, then again it's really important to look at, obviously, what are the questions that you did wrong, why you got them wrong. If it
Right.
was a question of time management issue, then
Mhm.
how can you improve the time, where are you taking the most time, what type of questions are taking the most time for you, stuff like that. So the analysis part is really important, and it takes a lot of effort because I'm sure not a lot of people like doing analysis. It's a, you can say, a very boring, or not a boring part, but like it's a very tough part, tough thing for people to really go over and dig up
Mm.
their own scores and then go deep dive into those scores in itself. So yeah, not a lot of people like doing it, but it's very important. Second tip I can give is, just keep doing it. A lot of people have realized, even my friends, which are like right now or
Mm.
in the last couple of years, they have been trying to give GMAT. They approach it from a very casual perspective, which I also some a mistake which I did in the beginning.
Oh.
They approach it from a casual perspective, like they would just start studying and then take a 2 month break and then start again and then
Mm-hmm.
get a 2 month break again. So it's another huge mistake, because from what I realized, it's actually better to start late,
Mm-hmm.
do a very intense practice, do a very intense the entire thing, and then give the GMAT, then starting very early and then going about it very slow
All
and
right.
very in a very haphazard way. So a
Mm-hmm.
structured way of doing it is much more, useful for anyone. In fact, a lot of people who I know are actually started really late, did a very intense course or something, and then attempted it, and they got like 740, 750. Very that's a much easier. It was easier for them also, because they had to only really go about it for 2 months, and they were able to go get a very good score.
All
So
right.
yeah, that was in terms of GMAT, that I would say the Armand would be my tips.
All right. Okay. So, what would you like to say about your experience and learnings from managing the application timelines?
Another very important, or you can say, mistake which I did was not realizing what exactly goes into the entire application process. So it was only when I hired a consultant,
Mm-hmm.
he was able to tell me, like, okay, obviously you have to do this before any application deadline. Because I
Right.
only knew the basics, that you have to do the essays, you have to do the resume, you have to do the recommendations, but there's even beyond that, there's a few more things which you have to do, which at that point I did not know.
All right.
And like, you have to reach out to people, you have to reach out to the alumni, you have to reach out to the current students, really understand the university before applying for it, because that it really has to come out in your application that you actually know about the university more than you
Mm-hmm.
know about yourself, in fact. So that entire process, which I realized was more complex than I thought about, it's actually put a lot of dent into the time. For instance, the first application which I did, I started 2 weeks before the actual deadline,
Oh.
and by the time it was when we were approaching the deadline,
Mm-hmm.
me and my friend were giving the were applying at the same time. So we started realizing that, okay, maybe this is not enough time for it. We still have to do X amount of stuff, but we were actually able to do it, but it was not the best way to go about it. Should have started maybe like another couple of weeks before that. But because there are a lot of applications in the same time period, because I'm sure almost every viewer knows this, that especially when the rounds are approaching, the deadlines are approaching, a lot of schools like to keep their deadlines really close to each other. Maybe it's because of the competitive nature of the entire thing. The whole B school is also a business. But yeah, I mean, it's really important to really start early with every application process, and really understand about the each college that you're applying to. And also, it definitely helps if you really understand your profile and if you actually fit into that school, because a lot of people just apply to 10 colleges just because they are the top colleges, or they come into the top 15, or they come to the top 20. They just apply because they have to. It's not a necessity that you have to. You really have to understand what colleges you're fit for. Again, big mistake which I made. I applied to schools because I thought, oh, these are good schools, I should apply to this. But I didn't fit into those schools. In fact, I realized that I don't fit into the whole US culture in itself. So again, so you really have to introspect kind of, and realize what your goals are, and do you actually, first of all, do you actually want to go to the country? Do you
Right.
actually want to go into the area or the region of that particular, like for instance, West Coast, East Coast, or whatever?
Mm-hmm.
And are the colleges good enough for that particular goal that you're pursuing? Is the alumni network good enough? Obviously most of the alumni networks are good enough, but these kind of factors really have to deep dive and understand, like, is that,
Mm-hmm.
if you are actually good for the school, but at the same time, is the school actually good for you?
Okay.
So because a lot of people really undermine their own you can say potential, I guess,
Right.
because the marketing of this entire US B
Mm-hmm.
schools are such that they really glorify. Obviously, they have to because it's a very competitive industry, but they really have to glorify their entire program, MBA programs. So especially students coming from international backgrounds, they really end up undermining their own profile. Like I said, you really have to see the fit, if it's a good fit for you.
Right. Absolutely. I agree. So, what would be your final suggestion and message to all the future GMAT aspirants watching this video?
For GMAT specifically, I would say that any one of you can get a really good GMAT score. There is really no. The beauty of GMAT is that it's adaptive, right? So you can get a good score even if you're not, for instance, and I was not good in maths at all. I really, because even though it's a very basic level of maths, I knew that I was not good at it. But the beauty of GMAT is that there's a very good balance of the two. There's a very good balance of the quantitative and the verbal aspect to it. So even if you're struggling in verbal, perhaps you really have to go about it in a very logical way, right? So kind of breaking it down, taking a step back and really understanding what you are attempting question by question really helps. Like I said, any one of you can get whatever score you're looking for, but at the same time, you really have to understand that it's not like 750 or getting anything above that is a necessity.
Right.
You should aim for a minimum score. You should not aim for a maximum score. That would be my suggestion.
Okay.
And in terms of the entire application process, like I mentioned, you really have to first understand if you are actually a good fit for the country, the region, and the college which you're applying to. Please don't apply haphazardly to, like 20 colleges, 15 colleges.
All
It's a
right.
lot of waste of resources. It's a waste of time.
Mm-hmm.
It's a waste of money, and it's a very anxious process. It's a very stressful process, and it's not a very pleasant process, I would say, if you're going about it in a wrong way. So spare yourself the whole stress and just apply to the colleges which you actually think you have a shot at, and they're actually a good fit for you. And yeah, good luck with the applications.
Right. Okay. Thank you so much, Sakar, because your suggestions, they're actually going to be so helpful to so many students who are actually planning
I'm
to.
glad.
Yeah, and we really, really appreciate you taking our time for this interview session and giving us your tips, suggestions, and sharing your journey so far with us. And we
No
really look
issues.
forward to knowing more about your journey in the near future. And all the
Thank you.
best for that. And
Thank you.
congratulations for the amazing score that you actually got
Yeah.
in your recent attempt.
Yeah. Thanks a lot for having me, Dikshita.
Yeah, thank you so much. And it's quite inspiring how far you've
Yeah.
come. Yeah, that's awesome.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
You have a great
Uh,
day. Yeah, take
you
care.
too.
Yeah,
Yeah, you
bye.
too.